Okay, welcome. Today, what I present to you is this. This is a Miro board, a script or talk track, however you want to call it, of what I found to be the most effective pre-handling phase on a sales call to be able to identify and sniff out any potential objections or limiting beliefs that a prospect might have and be able to effectively cover those objections and tackle them before they arise after the price drop for you to be able to get results like I've seen today, where I literally had one call on the calendar because call volume is low right now, and that call ended up being a 10K paid in full, with no objections at all. Now, does this happen for every single call? Absolutely not. That sale a laydown? Also, absolutely not. I had to work a very very difficult, very hard to obviously do what I had to do throughout the discovery to overcome any potential objections or limiting beliefs that are in alignment for that person taking out their credit card and paying 10K without giving any objections or rebuttals. But I can attest results like that to what I present to you here, which has gone through multiple amounts of calls taken, trial and error, seeing anything that may need tweaking or changes or improvement, and come to the conclusion that this is what I found to be the most effective pre-handling phase that I've now put together right in front of you here. Before we get into it as well, just so you know a bit about myself, I'm Brian. I have been in sales for a little while now, kind of worked my way up the food chain as far as starting to cold call, setting, triaging, closing, and now find myself in more of a kind of sales consultant role. Worked in a whole lot of different industries, niches, worked with a hell of a lot of sales trainers that you probably know the names of, that I've learned a lot from as well throughout the process. Worked with the largest sales training organization in the world. We're again a whole lot of different industries, niches, B2B, B2C, BizOp, coaching, agency, fitness, whatever it is. I've been there, I've done it, I've sold it. So let's go through it. There's going to be a couple kind of like core principles that you quite frankly have to cover before actually heading into like the whole pre-handling phase in the discovery call, or else quite frankly it just won't work. Now, just a note as well, so prospects, they'll have two outcomes at the end of the call. They'll either change or they're bullshitting themselves, right? That's obviously, of course, if you're on like a decent enough offer to the point at which like any or the majority of leads that are getting on calls with you, that they are for the most part qualified. But at the same time, as someone taking the sales call yourself, who might be a closer or offer owner, whatever it is, someone taking a sales call, you're tasked with helping someone get out of their own way. But if you aren't willing to do it for yourself, how effectively can you really be when you're actually doing it for other people? It's like, if you can help yourself get out of your own way, it's like a fat person being a personal trainer. Like, are you going to take their advice even though they can't get in shape for themselves? Who knows? Each to their own. But anyways, let's go into obviously why pre-handling objections and discovery is important. What's the goal? Obviously it's important because you'll have more objectionless closes. Therefore, your time on calls will be shortened and you'll have a higher close rate. The goal here, though, is to reframe your prospect's way of thinking and calling out like the attached behavior that hasn't been serving your prospects, making that an alignment to them making a decision to invest in themselves. Now, as well as that, where the pre-handling phase actually happens in the call is where a lot of people will, let's say, for example, if you have gone through any sort of like sales training or like basic sales training, a lot of the frameworks will be kind of like, it'll be like intro, situation, problem awareness, and solution awareness. The pre-handling phase will be typically where a lot of people have their kind of solution awareness kind of framework. So it would be after problem awareness. I say that because the clear outcomes you'll need before you're heading into the whole pre-handling phase is you'll need, first of all, a clear and tangible goal on what they actually want to achieve. When I say they, I mean the prospect, what they actually want to achieve. Let's say, for example, it's trading. They want to hit 10K a month and leave their job so they can trade full time. Again, because this is after problem awareness, you would need to have a somewhat, solid enough problem awareness to know that you'd have to find out a clear and tangible problem that's obviously associated with their current situation, while also getting the impact and or emotion with their problem and how long it's been going on for. Now, with that being said, if you need any help or any questions on any of those points made, let me know. Again, as I go through it as well, what I will say is like this is very much in depth, so I'm gonna try cover like the premise of everything as much as I can without obviously running it way too long than it should be. But again, if you've got any questions or anything in general, that maybe pop up while you're going through this, or just once you finish, let me know. I'll be happy to help where I can. What I can do is also maybe shoot over another Loom video covering another section that's in a bit more depth. Now, the first thing I asked to start off this pre-handling phase is I like to ask, outside of basic things like YouTube videos and books, in the past, have you gotten any sort of in-depth one-to-one help like this before so you could hit XYZ goal? Now, the majority of the time, they would not have gotten any help before, right? Like, I couldn't give a percentage, but I know there's a high percentage of the fact that obviously it's relevant and dependent on like the offer you're on, but a lot of the time they're not gonna have invested in themselves before, especially if it's something like BizOp or B2C. So more often than not, I'll kind of be going down this route where they say, no, I haven't. But let's cover the fact if they did, right? If they invested a significant amount before on an offer that is in the same industry, we obviously want to find out and get context on, first of all, how long ago was it? And secondly, like, what was it as well? And lastly, like, how much did they actually invest? Let's say someone said, I invested 5K into another trading mentorship before, and that was 6 months ago, right? The rationale here in not covering like a lot of that experience is because we do not want to rationalize that being an excuse to them being in a situation that they're in, right? Like, quite frankly, sure, it would be good to know, like, kind of, so to a certain degree, what happened and why they're on the call, even though they invested in themselves. But the main needle mover and the main goal in my eyes is for me to understand, like, okay, so like since then, what happened for you to want to get more help, right? And then we'll be able to kind of more so understand with them investing in themselves before. Obviously, first of all, what happened when they invested in themselves for them to want to get more help, but also assuming the fact that they're not brain dead, they'll also answer to say why it maybe didn't work out for them. So once we get that context, pretty much what I like to go in and ask is, okay, like obviously, first of all, with getting how long ago that was, you can kind of give some context as well to know, like, let's say, for example, if it was a couple months, like 3 months ago, you could ask at the start of this question, say like, okay, so within the past 3 months, when did you make that internal decision for you to want to get more help and make a change? Let's say, just to call the question as it is, to not change anything, is just saying, okay, so when did you make that internal decision for you to want to change and get more help? Now, the reason I say this question, like especially like the internal decision to want to change, get more help, is because a lot of the times when someone invested in themselves before, something would have had to happen. I mean, just in general, not even if they even invested in themselves before, but a lot of the time something had to happen for someone to want to hop on a call, go through a whole funnel, and be on the call with you, for them to want to potentially invest in themselves. Like, something would have had to happen typically, or something going on for a long period of time for them to want to be at that stage where they're looking to get more in-depth help, especially if they've got more help before. So we got kind of obviously want to understand and dig into why they're on the call, why they're looking to get more help even though they invested in themselves before. So once I give you the time frame, obviously probing and clarifying into the fact of like why. Let's say they said, a month ago. Why a month ago? And then obviously if they say a good enough reason, as I mentioned here as well, if they say a good enough reason as to what happened for them to want to change and get more help, you probe, you clarify, and you go into why now. So what makes now the time to want to make a change and get more help? Now, a good answer here, as in what made that, did you make that internal decision to want to change and get more help? A good answer will be a clear situation that had the prospect come to a realization about themselves for them needing to change. What I mean by that is like some sort of epiphany, like some sort of like conclusion the prospect arrived to that it just makes sense for them to want to get more help and be on the call. Let's say some guy is saying like, oh, I've been working the same job for 10 years and my wife just divorced me because of how much I've been working. Like, that is some fucked situation and an epiphany to be in that just makes sense as to why he's on the call. So obviously we don't have to go through like the whole phase as it is here if something like that happens, where they're just so open to the fact they can just give you that reason, and that does happen more frequently than you'd think. But yeah, I mean, once you've got that, once you feel like you've got a solid enough reason as far as like, what happened for them to make that internal decision to want to change, simply just go into why now. Okay, what makes now the time to want to make a change and get more help then, rather than maybe just like pushing it down the road and like a lot of people do. But let's look at the other side of the coin, where it's like, okay, maybe we don't get that good of an answer, good of a reason for them obviously to want to change and be on the call in the first place, is then probing into, let's say, okay, we go back to this question: when did you make that internal decision to want to change and get more help? Let's say they say, a month ago. What happened 6 months ago? So again, that was in the context of them giving a good answer. Here you would go, what makes now the time to want to make the change and get more help? But if they just give us, standard reason a month ago. Okay, so over a month, what would you say maybe prevented you or slowed you down to get this sort of help so you could achieve XYZ? We still want to go back to looping into like the same question as you see here. So whatever time frame it might be, if it's a month, 3 months, 6 months, 2 weeks, whatever it is, okay, over the past 6 months, what would you say maybe prevented you or slowed you down to get this sort of help so you could hit 10K a month? Now, going back to what the majority of people will give you, as far as like, no, I haven't tried anything. We'll go into like what the most important question is. Again, just kind of to start the whole thing off, really, is by asking what would you say maybe prevented you or slowed you down to get this sort of help so you could achieve XYZ. Now, again, the reason the prospect didn't change in the past is going to be the very same reason as to why they don't change with you on the call if it's not handled correctly. So there's two outcomes here. They either give an external reason or an internal reason. What we're looking for here is an internal reason. External meaning it's something that they cannot control. And internal, again, it's something that they can control and they're taking accountability and responsibility for that. In the green, again, as I mentioned, answers we're looking for is internal reasons on why maybe they didn't either trust themselves to take action in finding help. Internal reasons is maybe why there was uncertainty to invest into someone else. Maybe some examples: I was lazy, I was procrastinating, I was in my comfort zone, I thought I might get scammed, I didn't know who to trust, I wasn't sure if I was going to get the results. All these limiting beliefs, all these this way of thinking that's going on, and typically in a prospect's mind, that is them taking responsibility, knowing that they're not blaming it on something out of their control, like the economy or their job or whatever it is. It's like they're saying something that is themselves taking responsibility for that. And again, it's like by the way, these sticky notes are just kind of like as far as like why we're doing what we're doing. That's what helped me out a ton as well, is knowing like, okay, obviously there's a reason, but what is the reason? Because I want to understand that so I can actually use it when it's appropriate, not just when we're kind of going through this whole sequence. But heading back into it, so really, if we don't get the truth as to why the person never got this help before, again, we'll be just handling a smokescreen objection, because the reason why someone never got the help before will be the same reason to why they don't get this help in the future if it's not addressed. Now, that's reasons we're looking for. We're looking for internal reasons: lazy, procrastinating, comfort zone, I might get scammed, didn't know who to trust, wasn't sure if I was going to get these results. So obviously all that being uncertainty towards the end there. Answers, again, we're not looking for our external reasons, where the prospect is not taking ownership and accountability for themselves. They're blaming on their situation on something else. For example, I didn't have the money, I didn't have the time, nothing slowed me down, I was too busy, it was my job, I couldn't find anyone, I didn't take it seriously. All these different things here. You might also think like, I didn't take it seriously could be an internal reason. It's not. It's a smokescreen. It's a smokescreen, because if someone says I didn't take it seriously in the past, Did I write it? Yeah, I did actually. If someone says I didn't take it seriously, well, if you knew you could achieve XYZ goal, if you knew you could achieve a 10K month, then would you have taken it more seriously? Of course they would have, right? But they didn't. So obviously they'd say yes, but then you go into, okay, and do you think you'd have a higher or lower chance of getting 10K month or XYZ goal if you had gotten more in-depth help like this in the past? Oh yeah, I'd have more chance. Why do you think you'd have a higher chance though? Oh, because of XYZ. So if you thought about it, what would you say maybe prevented you from going out of your way and taking it more seriously so you could find someone to get more help and to hit 10K month and hit that XYZ goal? Um, Now that was a bit of a, obviously going into like one of the reasons as far as like external reasons to get, again, an internal reason, because we're not going to handle, like, for example, time or money or nothing slowed me down or I couldn't find anyone or I didn't take it seriously. We're not going to handle that because we know it's a smokescreen. So we want to reframe it and get an internal decision. And that's what we're doing here. We're funneling it down to, let's say, obviously, if they give us an internal reason there, happy days, we go into where it is here to start off when they have an internal reason. But let's say, for example, if they say they didn't make it a priority, that's what some people say as well. If they didn't make it a priority, can I share a perspective? We'll go into that as well. But let's say external reason that they couldn't find anyone, right? Now, again, it's a smokescreen because if they went out of their way to try find someone by taking it more seriously, they would have found the help. So, first of all, obviously, we want to past pace the prospect to realize if they had found this help before, they'd be closer to achieving their goals. So obviously, we just kind of want to get buy-in here to say, like, okay, it's fair to say though, if you got this sort of help in the past, you'd be in a better position than what you're in now, right? Of course. So what would you say prevented you to go out of your way and try find this help so you could hit XYZ goals, so you could hit 10K month? And then if they still say that they couldn't find anyone, same thing here. If they say they didn't make it a priority, can I share a perspective? Yes, of course. It's like an overweight person saying, I want to get a six pack, but I couldn't find a personal trainer. Because if they viewed it a priority and they had solid intent around getting a six pack, they would have went out of their way to try find someone to help them get there. So can you see how that correlates with you not finding someone to get this help in the past? Now, pretty much what you're doing here is just, again, tying in an analogy that correlates with them not getting resourceful to find more help, to obviously give their situation more clarity, that they didn't have enough urgency to find someone. Now, what I mean by that is, like, again, the analogy here is just pretty much just tying it into their current situation to why they maybe didn't make it a priority or didn't make it, a necessity to go and find someone to get more help. And, it's pretty much just painting a picture. So if you thought about it then, what prevented you to go out of your way to make it a priority and try find someone so you could get more in-depth help and hit XYZ goal? Phrasing the question in a way where it's clear and it's concise, but asking it in a direct way for the prospect to know, I'm not settling for their bullshit excuse, because we know that's a bullshit an excuse. Because if they got the help, they would have taken more seriously. If it was a necessity and they had urgency around getting to XYZ goal, they would have went out of their way to try find someone. So I'm not settling for that. You shouldn't either. Now, also, let's say, for example, they say nothing slowed me down. We kind of want to appeal to their ego a little, because, like, if someone's saying nothing slowed me down, like, they're kind of like not a type A, maybe they could be, but like they have a little bit of wits about them to know that maybe they're kind of not that maybe problem aware. So again, we kind of want to appeal to their ego by saying obviously, woman of your caliber, if it's female, I've no doubt a man or woman of your caliber would have been either at XYZ goal at 10K month or on track to hitting 10K month if nothing was genuinely in your way. If you really thought about it, what would you say prevented you or slowed you down to get this sort of help in the past? So again, we're kind of just inflating their ego by, saying a man or woman of your caliber so they can drop their guard and give you that real reason as to why the prospect never got this help in the past. Now, when it comes to time or money, it's simple. It's a smokescreen. So we obviously, first of all, want to get them to take ownership and accountability of their situation. So, first of all, what you want to go in and say is like, okay, sure, maybe, time and money isn't 100% your fault, but the situation you're in, whose problem is that to solve at the end of the day? They'll say, oh, it's mine. Okay, so with that being your problem, can I share a perspective? Sure. Well, it's subjective, right? Because if we look at time at the end of the day, same thing for money, right? We're just going to use time for this example. If we look at time at the end of the day, it's going to be a byproduct of already having the right strategy and knowledge with XYZ offer, with trading, with content creation, whatever it is. Um, because if you had the right knowledge and strategy with, for example, the offer being maybe trading, what would you have more of? Oh, I'd have more time. Right. So again, what we're doing here, just reframing the reason that for them not changing in the past with either a lack of time or money isn't the problem, but a symptom of the problem. Because if they had achieved what they'd wanted from getting the help in the past, they would have already had more time and more money. So then we kind of want to go into the fact of like, okay, there's two types of people at the end of the day. There's someone who says I can't, so I won't. There's someone who says, how can I find the time? How can I get resourceful so I can get to where I want to go? Now, which type of person do you feel like you have to become to get the results you want? Really attaching that to obviously their identity as far as like, okay, to get to where you want to go, which type of person you have to be. Again, getting the prospect to take ownership and viewing time and money in a different way if they want to get the results that they want to. Now, we also want to get buy-in as far as why they say that type of person as well. So let's say, oh, I want to be the second type of person. Okay, what makes you say you want to be the second type of person though? And then obviously they'll give you that answer and you want to go in and ask, okay, if you thought about it then, what do you feel like has slowed you down or prevented you from being that second type of person and getting resourceful and doing whatever it took to be able to get 10K a month XYZ goal? Now, after clarifying why they need to get resourceful and take accountability, now it really boils down to the prospect likely giving you the reason as to why they didn't change, or they give us another external excuse that we again need to handle. But again, if they say something, it's probably going to be covered here already. If it's not, let me know. I can kind of cover it as well. So they give us an internal reason. We go to covering that limiting belief, which is all the way up here. This is where the magic happens. We have the internal reason. We know what to do. Oh, this is, sorry, going through what to do when we have that internal reason. Again, everything that we've covered on this side is when they give us an external reason, which doesn't give us much to work with. So, first of all, what we want to do is once we get that internal reason, no matter where it was, maybe if it was here, maybe if it was here, maybe if it was here, who knows? We want to first of all thank them. Thank them for their honesty. That reinforces them to continue to be honest. And again, we're just kind of reiterating what the problem is, to call it out again, to get their buy-in before actually going and tackling it. So I appreciate the honesty. So it's fair to say why you didn't get this help in the past is because of maybe that uncertainty, lack of trust in knowing, if it'll work or not. So for these examples, I'm just going to say uncertainty. Because really a lot of them just does boil down to uncertainty. Like, for example, obviously I was lazy, I was procrastinating, I was in my comfort zone. It's like that's themselves. But I thought I might get scammed. I didn't know who to trust. I wasn't sure if I was going to get me the right results. That's someone else. So it's uncertainty in someone else or uncertainty in themselves. First half, uncertainty in themselves by saying they were lazy, procrastinating, I was in my comfort zone, at least for the most part anyways. And then latter half being uncertainty in someone else. So obviously, once we thank them, we get the buy-in as to what that internal reason is. We kind of want to past pace the internal reason to get them to realize their current situation would be better if it wasn't for this way of thinking. So it makes sense because it's fair to say if you've gotten this help before, you'd be in a better position than what you're in now, right? Right, of course. And then at the same time, though, how much has that way of thinking and that uncertainty costed you in terms of time or money potential because you never got this help? Now, what we're doing, we're past pacing the cost of them not taking action from having this uncertainty, this way of thinking that caused them, again, to not take action, not to get this help before. And then we go into, okay, so how does it make you feel knowing that you've wanted to hit 10K a month for the last 12 months? Again, this is why, as well, context before going into pre-handling is so important, because if you get a clear and tangible goal on what someone wants to achieve, I should also add like how long they've wanted it for. Was right how long? Then again, just gives us more context to know what we should be handling. So again, this is pretty much getting an emotional attachment here. How does it make you feel knowing you've wanted to hit 10K a month for the past 12 months, but you're in the same situation because ultimately it was no one else but you slowing yourself down? Again, tying the emotional impact after past pacing the cost of inaction from this way of thinking, because humans make a decision to change based off emotions and justify it with logic. Now, also to add, like, obviously it's important to get an emotional impact after some sort of problem, which is what we're doing here. It's an emotional impact from like the cost of inaction of them having that way of thinking. But I always feel like asking how does that make you feel is a bit corny. If the From my perspective on it, it's like a lot of the times sales has gotten so much to the point at which if someone asks you how does that make you feel, it's like they know what you're going to do with that answer, as in use it against them. So what I also like to ask, if that's the same thing for you, is like, okay, well, what's that doing to you though? Or what goes through your mind knowing that? You'll still get likely an emotional impact as an answer. Now, after getting that emotional impact, you want to pretty much future pace the consequence here, which is going into saying, okay, what happens if you keep on having that way of thinking and that uncertainty get in the way moving forward? Again, future pacing the consequence, that gets the prospect to understand what their life actually will look like if they continue to have this limiting belief hold them back. Now, this is like kind of the make or break of it, really, because sometimes resistance and pushback can often happen, especially asking this question here. But just know, if that is the case, you're heading in the right direction, because why the resistance comes up in the first place is because it's uncomfortable for someone to explore the consequences of their self-sabotage, because it's that way of thinking that they've been so used to operating from. So confronting it isn't easy for some, if any people at all. So again, just know this is really the make or break, because sometimes resistance does come up. Resistance is not a bad thing. Like, I genuinely believe you need resistance on a call for someone to close, especially if they're going to hand you over 5, 10, 20, 50K plus. Now, obviously, again, sometimes dependent on the offer situation or whatnot, but I mean, like, especially B2C, there is going to have to be some sort of resistance for that prospect to close, because at the end of the day, like, they wouldn't be in the call with you if their actions and their thought process behind their actions was in accordance to them getting the goal that they wanted to. So going back to it though, what happens if you keep on having that way of thinking and that uncertainty get in the way moving forward? Let's explore if there is resistance. They say maybe that's not going to happen. I feel like I've already overcome XYZ, that uncertainty. We go into, look man, of course, if it's a man, if it's a female, look, I'm not questioning your willingness to change. You seem like a committed guy, because being on the call is a step in the right direction, but nothing's changed yet. Someone could go to the gym, but it's not until they hit the treadmill or pick up the weights until change actually starts to happen. And then you re-ask the question, but what does that actually look like? Like, what happens if you keep on having that way of thinking that and that uncertainty getting away moving forward? Well, what does that actually look like though? Now, again, sometimes they'll give you the answer. Maybe there'll also be a bit more resistance. But the reason we say this is because we're not tackling their commitment. We're confronting their previous lack of commitment, labeling them as committed while tying in an analogy to show them why being on the call also doesn't correlate with future change. That's why we're saying what we're saying here. Now, again, if there is still resistance and they don't want to answer, we kind of go into like the ice cream van and burning building analogy. Sounds exciting, but obviously we'll go into that. But let's say, for example, they do give you a reason. Is what you want to do is future pace the prospect to come up with a solution to the internal reason that held them back, so that after they realize that their way of thinking doesn't serve them, they realize their actions need to change to support them in changing their situation. A bit of a mouthful, but pretty much you're asking here, how do you plan on overcoming that uncertainty and that way of thinking so you can get the results you want to once and for all? their answer should be something along the lines of, I need to take action, I need to get help, I need to invest in myself, whatever it is. Again, that is when you know we've struck gold here, because they're giving you a reason to change. That reason is in alignment for them to take action and get more help. And that is what it is right here, right now. So them saying, I need to get more help, I need to invest in myself, I need to take action, whatever it is. Now, obviously, we ask why now, how committed, and then we go into future pacing, which we'll go into a little bit more depth, but covering the kind of little analogy here. So let's say, again, we go down this route and there is resistance. We reframe it with the gym analogy, and we label them as committed. We re-ask the question and there's still resistance. You obviously want to just give an analogy saying, can I share a perspective? Sure. Imagine there's a kid running towards an ice cream truck on a hot summer's day. Compare that to a man running out of a burning building. Who's going to run faster? Probably the man. What makes you say the man running out of the burning building will run faster? Oh, well, because it's life or death. He's running away from something. Exactly, because he's running away from something. So if we aren't open to looking at what we're running away from, there's likely going to be a lack of drive to want to change. So let's look at it. What genuinely happens if you keep on having that way of thinking and that uncertainty getting in the way moving forward? Like, what does that actually look like? We're pretty much just using this analogy to show, okay, I'm not, again, questioning your willingness to change here, but we're already somewhat clear on where we're looking to run towards. Like, I understand that, for example, you want to hit XYZ goal, 10K a month, whatever it is, retire your parents, whatever the case might be. But I'm not serving you to the point at which I would have wanted to if I don't understand what it is you're running away from, because by me understanding that and you also understanding that, you're going to want to hit that goal and run away from that situation, and have a bit more of a drive and determination and willingness to change if we're willing to explore that, if we're willing to explore what that building is that you're running away from. So that's the rationale behind the analogy. Going back into like kind of the complete, sequence here is, again, kind of future pacing the prospect to come up with a solution. So saying, how do you plan on overcoming that uncertainty in that way of thinking so you can get the results you want to once and for all? You're asking why now? What makes now the time to want to make a change, draw a line in the sand, rather than continue to do what you have been doing for another couple of months, maybe just kick the can down the road? Because you could, and a lot of people might. Obviously, the prospect should have now come to the realization that change should have been made a long time ago already. So their answer ideally should be an empowering enough reason why they need to change, and or a deep enough consequence if their situation is the same. So obviously their answer would be like, oh, I need to change now because of XYZ. It's been going on for so long already. I'm not satisfied with the situation I'm in. I know I'm deserving of better, whatever it might be. So after asking why now, is we want to get their commitment towards making a change. So how committed are you to want to go and make a change and do something differently and embrace the challenges and discomfort so you can get the results you want to? You're not sugarcoating it here. You're being real. You're empowering them to go all in, because their first hurdle they've got to overcome before they actually pull their card out of their wallet. That hurdle is themselves. So we want to understand, okay, how committed are they actually to embrace the challenges and that discomfort? Like, we're not sugarcoating it. We know it's going to be uncomfortable, right? Because now we're talking about making a change here. And we've gotten to the point at which they've pretty much confessed in themselves that they know they need to make a change. So we're just pretty much embracing the reality of the fact that it's not comfortable. Change is never comfortable. So again, we kind of want to get a numerical figure as well attached to that. So just kind of getting buy-in, like 100%, like 100% willing to change, committed to change. Only obviously applicable if their last answer, they didn't give you a number attached to their commitment level, like a 10 out of 10 or 100%, whatever it is. So we're pretty much just getting buy-in from the fact that they're 100% committed. Obviously, anything less than a 10 out of 10 or 100%, we need to understand why and pretty much gotta go back to the whole start. Maybe not the whole start, but obviously tackle as far as why it might not be 100%. But if you've done everything correctly here, it would be 100%. And then you want to transition into future pace. How I like to do that kind of smoothly is going, okay, so let's say you are 100% committed. You're in a position then where you're hitting 10K a month, you're hitting XYZ goal. how would life actually be different than it is now? Then you can, continue with future pacing and then go into consequence if it's appropriate. But again, that's pretty much essentially everything as far as what we've covered here. Again, if you've got any questions with regards to what we went through, as well, anything maybe you want a bit more in depth as far as like a more detailed explanation, let me know. I'd be happy to kind of go over other sections in a bit more depth, or if there's any parts where first of all, if you use this, let me know. If you've got any questions, let me know. If you've watched all this way, where you're seeing this now, also let me know, because again, it's a much appreciated. I've put a lot of time and effort into creating this and making sure it works effectively. So learn this, try it, use it on calls, and what I will say to add, and before I finish this off, is don't rely on it, right? Don't rely on it, because this is something I've come up with myself through from the way that I go about selling. A lot of people, everyone kind of goes about sales or selling in their own different style, their own different way. So this is my way, and this is something that I know works for me. Find what works for you. Use this as to give you context, or use this as a point of reference when you're doing that. And again, let me know if there's anything I can help with. I'm rooting for you. Crush it. Let me know how it goes if you do try it, and I will speak with you later on, hopefully. So yeah, peace. Have a good one.